Hello and welcome back to Division I Rejects. I'm your host, Kobe Manzo. This is D1R 189 on the night of December 16th, 2024. It's basically mid-December and we still get to talk about college football for a couple of weeks, honestly, even at the small school level. And I'm joined by two incredible guests tonight, quarterbacks for both their teams, respectively, going to the national championships at two different levels. First, joining me, I've got Trinidad Chambliss, the man under center for the Ferris State Bulldogs. He has been about as dynamic as you could ask for out of a signal caller or anyone on the field, for that matter, in the Bulldogs' 2024 campaign, has been lighting up the scoreboard. Ferris State, a tough Week 0 loss against Pittsburgh State. They have bounced back and made their way to the national championship game. We'll talk all about that and more with Trinidad later on. Jackson Waring, the quarterback from Grandview at the NAIA level, representing the great state of Iowa in the NAIA National Championship game. They took down two big-time Iowa foes in Morningside and Northwestern the last couple of weeks. Excited to talk to him about everything going on with the Vikings. Later on, I'll discuss the Division II National Championship game, recap both the semifinal contests, and then Jimmy Martin will join me to talk some D3 football. I'll close it out with the NAIA conversation. A lot of great football, a lot of great discussion, and really the best time of the year. One, because we have all the best football, and two, because admittedly, like, this season is a grind. As far as like covering it, we've put a lot into, and I've put a lot into covering football this year, and I'm, a little bit ready for a break, but the light's at the end of the tunnel, and there's kind of two lights. One is that we get to see national championship type games, and the other is that we get a little bit of a break, because with the transfer portal and all the coaching changes and all this and that, to be honest with you, football can be exhausting. Football can absolutely be exhausting. I wish sometimes there's just an off switch. But thankfully, we've got great guys like Trinidad, Jackson, Jimmy, other guys joining me tonight to talk about football. And I think that's when you tune into this show, what you'll find is that, yes, we cover a lot of football, but I think the root of this show is in the off season and covering stories. And that's what I'm much more into than covering the X's and O's of games and scores and recaps. I want to cover stories. And so throughout the course of the regular season, of course, you're going to see a lot of game day coverage from us. This episode will have a ton of it, but definitely once we get into this offseason, you'll see that we want to cover a lot more stories, not worry so much about statistics and records and all these things, but I want to talk about the people that make up these small college football teams. So you'll see more of that. That's enough of my tangent for the start of this episode. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, do not forget to subscribe. Just eclipsed 2,000 subscribers on the platform. That's very exciting news. Do not forget about the video chapters in the description below. Fast forward to any part of the video you want to listen to, then get the hell out of here. Or hear me out, listen to the entire thing, or just let it roll on the YouTube, let it roll on TV or on the laptop or the phone. Whatever you're watching on, just let it roll. Maybe you're out doing something, cooking lunch, whatever you're doing. Let it roll. Otherwise, listening Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. Follow us on the socials to see highlights from the show and other great content. Let's get to the conversation you guys are here for with Trinidad Chambliss. Joining the show tonight, quarterback for the Ferris State Bulldogs, Harlon Hill finalist. He's getting ready for a trip down to McKinney, Texas. It's Trinidad Chambliss. What's going on, man?
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Dude, excited to get you on here, and I was telling you before we got going that could have literally had you on the show any single week of the season, although I had a feeling we would have a little bit more of an exciting conversation in December. Here we are, dude. Got to be a pretty good spot to be in, huh?
Oh, we're here. Playoff mode, playoff season, regular season's done. Obviously, we got the national championship up this weekend, so I'm excited.
I totally believe that. And first of all, congratulations. Being a finalist for that award is something that is incredible. And I know that looking from the outside in, there's a lot of guys, Zabrowski being at the forefront of the conversation, Siobhan Wright, those guys that are great football players in their own right, a part of successful football teams. But for you, I think you're in kind of an interesting predicament in that I think a lot of people, including myself, will put you in that upper echelon of one of the best players in the country. The thing that maybe they have on top of you is the statistics, like this ridiculous numbers. Not to say that yours have not been impressive throughout the course of the season, but you guys have been winning incredibly good football games, and you have been at the forefront of that. And not to get into I'm not going to, quiz you and make your case for the voters, but, I just don't think that an award like the Harlon Hill or the Heisman and those kind of awards, I think people don't understand they're so based and rooted in numbers, right? And so I think for you, guys like you, it certainly gives you a little bit of a disadvantage. You kind of along those same lines.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like the games that we had this year, we've had tough games. Our conference is pretty tough. We play Saginaw Valley, Davenport, Grand Valley. So we have, tough opponents. But some of the other opponents, aren't so as sturdy and hard. So majority of the games, I was sitting, maybe a half or even a quarter. So, my stats are kind of, took a blow by that. But, honestly, I feel like the Harlon Hill should be given out to the best Division II player. And I feel like that's me, and I feel like I'm deserving of that. I feel like the other candidates are great players, but I feel like what I've accomplished has been, great here so far at Ferris.
I'd go ahead and agree with you there. And I think it's always funny when you see guys who have takes like that. And it's like, who would you be to not have the confidence level to go and say that, right? If you're not going to go ahead and believe in yourself and believe that you earned that, award, and how could you ask anyone else to believe that? Right. I think that's always people on the outside. They always, oh, this guy comes off as this or that. But I think from my perspective, if you don't believe that you've earned that award, then you shouldn't even be in the conversation. Because if you don't believe it yourself, how can you go and convince, a panel of voters or people across the country that you've earned that? And I think you've made your case, right? Everything is, your resume is out there. And so now it's just up to them. But, talking about this season kind of retroactively, I know we still got a game to play here. You go back to that week 0 game, Pittsburgh State. Carson goes down, and it certainly is not as though you would have been on the bench this year. That's anything but the truth. But obviously that injury propels you into this position. Did that force you to take on kind of the face of this offense in that role? And how did that kind of turn into something even greater over the course of the next couple of weeks there?
Yeah, going into the season, we knew that it's going to be like a two quarterback situation,
Mm-hmm.
a two QB room. Tony Nese, he always has, multiple quarterbacks, playing, whether it's like a passing quarterback or running quarterback or a bigger quarterback like Carson. We knew that going in the year. And yeah, him going down versus Lake Erie was definitely a blow to our team. We definitely could have used him in, games later on in the season. Definitely a blow to our just program. Honestly, he's just been a great player. But yeah, I mean, I had to step up into a leadership role that was kind of quicker than I thought.
Yeah.
There's not really like a second string guy that could, play or have experience, I guess, in game. So I just had a lot on my shoulders. So I mean, it was just a great experience, and I feel like the experience that I've gone through, each game, I've only grown as a player. So
100%. The strides that you've been able to make seemingly on and off the field. I mean, I'm not down there in the facility, but just judging off of what I've seen, they've been really impressive, dude. As someone who got to see you play in person last year, and obviously you'd shown some really good flashes of being a really damn good football player. And this year it's like they aren't flashes anymore. It's just the way that you play. And it's become that consistency, and the level that you're constantly performing at has been really fun to follow along with. But you talk about the bounce back at Lake Erie after the starting loss at Pittsburgh State, and I'm sure there was a chunk of the guys down there in Big Rapids that were maybe hoping the Gorillas would come through and you'd get that rematch in the playoffs. Now, you get Harding instead, of course, and we know how that went. But talk about the growth of this team from that point, week 0, down in the jungle, in a really tough environment. You start the year 0-1, which is not synonymous with Ferris State football. How far has this team come? Where are they at now?
we've come a long way. I feel like after week 0 versus versus Pitt State, we're not really used to losing, and that's something that Ferris State, really doesn't do. So everyone was kind of blown back by that. And I feel like a lot of people doubted us. People thought that this wasn't going to be, a great Ferris State football team like we've had teams in the past. And people doubted us, on offense. People doubted me as a quarterback. And yeah, I mean, we've just bounced back as a team. Offensive line has played amazing this year. I just can't emphasize that enough. Without them, like none of this is like possible. I mean, they're the ones that get it done up front. And I feel like our defensive players have stepped up huge. We just faced a tough Slippery Rock team, great wide receivers and whatnot. But yeah, we've just come a long way. I mean, game by game, we're just getting better and better. So just proud of our guys.
Absolutely. And that you talk about that offensive line, the D-line unit, that line of attack for you guys right there. The skill level is off the charts, but the depth is something that I don't think anyone can match, especially at this level of football. I mean, you look across college football, and that's been kind of the calling card for you guys. Literally next man up. We even saw at points, between this season, last season, whatever, where you'd sub out all 5 of an offensive line unit and bring in a whole nother group that would just pick it up right from there. But, to talk about the playoffs more in particular, you put some beatdowns on what I don't think people realize are very good football teams. Central Oklahoma was a very good football team. I don't even have to say anything about Harding. Talk about Slippery Rock. That wasn't the case this weekend. What did they do well? How'd they challenge you guys?
Yeah, they just had a great start. Earlier we had a lot of mistakes. We had a couple turnovers that killed us and killed drives, which you never want to be in that position as an offense. You want to have a fast start and a good start to any game. But they had a great scheme for us. And then as time went on, our guys started to pick it up. Just playing Ferris State football, getting into the rhythm of things. And then, yeah, just executing honestly. And then we knew that our drives were going to be limited, down the stretch. Slippery Rock had, I think I saw on ESPN, it was like they had the ball for like 29 minutes and then
Yep.
we had like 15 minutes. It was a crazy stat like that. So we knew every possession counted. And sure enough, we executed right and ended up getting the win. So
Absolutely. It felt like defensively from Slippery Rock, they definitely posed a challenge to you in that it just, again, just watching from an audience perspective, their D-line maybe gave up a lot of that penetration, tried to play incredibly gap responsible to keep you in that pocket. They did not want you going anywhere else, and they made that a challenge to you. And I think, again, me watching you this season, that's probably the place where your game has grown so much. Talk about that development, your confidence level there. And, I think you've really proven that you can do it in that area just as well as anywhere else in the field.
right, yeah, it was kind of a shock. They didn't give any pass rush, and they were just waiting for me to maybe scramble or
Yeah.
make a crazy decision to just run. But I know I'm a dual threat quarterback. I've been playing quarterback my whole life. I can throw the ball, so if
Hell
teams
yeah.
are
There it is.
I can throw the ball. So it's kind of a shock. And I was like, all right, if you guys aren't going to rush me, I have all time, to read coverage and whatnot, make a great decision on the field. So that was kind of a shock. I knew they had a pretty decent D line. They
Yep.
had a Pittsburgh transfer. He was pretty quick and fast. But yeah, they kind of gave us fits at the beginning of the game, and we just had to adjust at half. We were all calm. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I've grown so much as a player. This whole season, just going through different situations. Maybe teams are really run heavy or pass heavy, and just making right decisions and just growing. So.
Yeah, there was no worry on that sideline. I'm going to talk about that later in this episode, too. When you talk about a Minnesota State team that was down on the road at Valdosta, and they're showing the sidelines, and the Mavs are smiling, having a good time. They've been a part of a ton of competitive games where they've come back late, down multiple scores. You guys, although it hasn't happened very often, have had to come from behind at certain points, and you don't get rattled in that situation. But a guy on the offense that I definitely want to hear about is Cannon Katzer, dude, and what he's added to this offense. Of course, his coming on the scene party with that UCO game, his performance, a ton of stats, along with one bulldozed referee in the middle of the field, which was kind of the highlight of the day. I thought that was hilarious. But you talk about this guy, JUCO pickup. He had some D1 experience. He's fit right in. Talk about what makes him so dangerous.
I mean, yeah, he's just so calm, and he's been at the highest level. I mean, he played at Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
Then he went JUCO and balled out there. We were lucky enough to get him here at Ferris State, and he's been nothing but a blessing. He's just a complete back. He can catch the ball, he can run routes, and obviously you can see what he does on the ground too. He's just a great guy. His patience is what really um, is I'm impressed about the most. He's just so patient, just finds the hole and waits on the O line and get to their blocks and then once the hole's open, boom, he's gone. So he's been a great addition to the program and great guy to have in the backfield with me.
Yep, that seems like a correct answer. He's been fun to watch, especially over the course of these last couple weeks. And talk about the defense, other side of the ball. Shut out in the second half. They allowed 38 in the first, and it was like, this is not how this game is supposed to go. This is not the way that we've come to associate Ferris State defense. What did you see from them to help flip the switch defensively? And I know the biggest storyline for that defense coming into the year, obviously Connor Neer coming back after a stint down in Oklahoma, but he's got a dude right next to him in Cepha that has been playing some incredible ball. I know those two are just a piece of it, but talk about what flipped in the second half of that defense.
Honestly, they just had to calm down a little bit and just trust themselves. They've been playing ball ever since they've been little. They've been doing it all year, being a lockdown defense. Our DBs, just really had to calm themselves down, trust themselves, trust their technique. And then, Cepha and then the linebacker group, they've just been a leader this whole year.
Mm-hmm.
Really solid up front, defensive wise, D-line wise. Vic Nelson, too, Big Vic.
Oh, yeah.
He's a crazy dude. Just pass rush is nuts. So, I mean, our defense is solid, man. And I feel like that was what we needed as a defense, too. We needed to go up against, offense that likes to test our DBs. And I feel like Valdosta State likes to throw the ball a lot too. They got a pretty good quarterback over there. So I feel like we needed this game versus Slippery Rock, and our guys are prepared for it now.
Totally hear you there, and I think, to your point, a great test and a good prove-it experience for you guys, going into this national championship. You're certainly not coasting by any means, right? And no one should be at this stage of the game, obviously. You got a really good opponent on the other side of the ball. Does that make it a classic best-of-3 situation with the Blazers in the Natty? I mean, you go back 2018, they get the win. You guys took it in 21. Now we have, the grudge match?
Yeah, it's
that's awesome, by the way.
Best out of
Ridiculous.
3. Yeah, great program over there in Valdosta State. Powerhouse, just like us.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully we can get the upper edge on them and end up victorious. So it's gonna take a lot. We just have to execute, have a great start. We can't have a slow start like how we had against Slippery Rock, and
Yeah.
we knew that. We just got out of film, watched a decent amount of film on them. I think it was like pretty long. It was a long meeting. So yeah, we're ready for their defense, and obviously, we got the whole week to prepare for them too. So
Feels like this Valdosta team quite a bit different than the one you guys saw a few years ago. A lot more physical at the point of attack. Have shored up some of those pieces on the offensive defensive line, respectively, because that was the name of the game, and you guys routed them in the national championship. Feels like a very different squad. Is that some of the rhetoric around there in that building?
oh yeah, definitely. Ever since 2021, I think they've had a different head coach. I think TA had said
Yep,
that. So new scheme, new game plan, new defenses, new coaches. So I mean, they got a whole new program since when we played them in
absolutely.
2021. So we just got to prepare for that, and yeah, just honestly, just play our game, man. That's just I can't harp on that enough. So
Right with you, dude. I'm excited to tune in. One thing I had for you is if you guys do pull it out, on Saturday, no smoking cigars in the locker room. Huh? We don't need any more suspensions. Can we agree on that?
of course, yeah, TA already made it. That we can't have any of that. We're gonna have security in the locker room, so none of that.
I remember when that news broke, that was the most ridiculous. I mean, because that was like all the Harbaugh stuff was going on too, and you're like, wait, why is this guy not being able to?
It was
But no,
wild.
jokes aside, man, I'm pumped. I'm really excited to tune into this one. I know you guys are. It's really easy to get up for a game like this, but best of luck to you and the boys there. I'll definitely be tuned in, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a good rest of your night, Trinidad.
You too.
See ya. All right, talking about Division II football, finish it up with Trinidad. Let's talk about his Bulldogs team. And in this game, I mean, there was a whole lot to cover, guys. This Bulldog team, they get punched in the mouth early on, and you're not going to see it here, but Slippery Rock, they had things going against a very talented Ferris State attack, and that's one of two forced fumbles in the first half. This Slippery Rock defense able to generate that, both of them by Eddie Faulkner on the defensive side for Slippery Rock. Ferris State, though, they would respond. They had a pick six. They started clicking offensively after that, and they just got rolling from there on out. Another Harlon Hill finalist in Braden Long was connecting all over the field. That guy had himself a day. Logan Romper, 8 catches, 171 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air for him. But we talked with Trinidad earlier on. You see him doing damage all over the field, whether it's in the pocket, scrambling, rolling out to his right or his left. It does not matter. The guy can do it from anywhere. Braden Long, he had 2 interceptions inside of the red zone in the second half. Ferris State, the defense, pitches a shutout in the last 2 quarters, and Ferris State, they take this one 48-38, Bulldogs on top. Here's Chambliss rolling out again, doing it with his legs by himself to the outside for another score. Once again, the dude does it all. He's got some really great pieces around him in those offensive skill positions. You see it here, another one of those big-time interceptions in the red zone from that Ferris State defense. And that really was the name of the game in the second half. Ferris State finding a way to kick the ball out of Braden Long's hands and get it away from that Slippery Rock attack. Plays like this certainly don't hurt either. Ferris State has been known to just gash teams, whether it's on the outside with pure speed or up the middle with physicality. Ferris State is multidimensional. They can do it all, and they certainly did that on Saturday, at least in the second half. Took a little bit maybe of a slower start that were uncharacteristically, kind of with this Ferris State team. But nonetheless, the mark of a very good football team is to get the job done no matter the start, all about how you finish. Ferris State, they finished in a very good fashion, got the job done on Saturday. So, moving forward from that, talk about those 2 fumbles earlier on. And again, I think the first big note is a massive kudos to Slippery Rock. Nobody, and I mean nobody, gave you a chance in this game. Jimmy and I and or anyone on our show, we didn't necessarily do the game picks for this week. I'll be the first to tell you I would have come on here and taken Ferris by at least 14. I'll be the very first one to tell you. I'm sitting in the studio at work on Saturday. I was called in, and I'm sitting there watching on one of the TVs that I had it on, and I see that connection to start things off, Long to Romper on the sideline, and I'm like, oh, shit. My genuine reaction was, oh, shit. What kind of game is this going to be? And again, nobody gave him a chance. They're up 4 going into the fourth quarter. Braden Long, he showed that he's still the dude. Chris Dior, Dries Lawrence, one of the best backfields in the country, and even against a very great defensive front from Ferris, they limited them a lot offensively in that offensive backfield. I talked about the day that Logan had on the outside. The Rock, they punched first, 60-yard touchdown pass. I didn't even know what was happening. And then you talk about some solid game planning from the Rock. And Trinidad and I talked about it a little bit. They had some great pressure in the run game, took down a few plays early for a loss, but played Chambliss very differently in the first half. Felt like typically the teams would put a linebacker in kind of a quote-unquote spy responsibility for Chambliss. And if you're not familiar with football, basically, if you're on a spy assignment as a defender, or there's other verbiage and other kind of words for that, disregard any other assignment. It's like guarding the best guy on the basketball court. You go where he goes. So the quarterback is just going to drop back and pass. Yeah, just sit there and wait. And as soon as he picks and chooses and declares a side, go after his ass, make a tackle, and try and make a play behind the line of scrimmage. But that has not been working for Team Slippery Rock. They flipped it up. And the defensive line from Slippery Rock playing what I would call very gap responsible, not getting too far upfield, definitely not much of an emphasis on penetration or, pass rush, so to speak, from that Slippery Rock defense, who they have a good defensive line unit. It was just a different game plan from them. Chambliss still had 120 yards rushing with all of that being said, which is very impressive. I talked about it, the 2 interceptions in the red zone. That hurts. That really felt like it sealed the deal for the Bulldogs. The defense, they shut out the Rock in the second half, started getting some more pressure on the quarterback as well in that second half. DBs from Ferris. I think that's been kind of the question mark for this defense. We know all about that linebacking core, right? You talk about Sefa Sapaya, Connor Neer. They might be the best linebacker duo in the country. 19 combined tackles in this one helped hold Slippery Rock to only 55 yards rushing on over 30 carries. Hell of a stat. The defensive line, led by the likes of Victor Nelson and just demonstrative people up front that are able to get to the ball and make plays in the backfield. We know about them. But how about the DBs? They were outmatched, a little bit outsized in this one, and they stepped up to the challenge in the second half. They're going to have to do that again in the national championship game. Valdosta State has some weapons. They also have a dude slinging the ball under center in Sammy Edwards. So that'll be the most interesting battle for me. Ferris State, the defensive backs, seem to step up to the challenge in this one, but I think that is certainly the point where, Ferris has the most opportunity to improve is at that DB position because they got guys who can run. They certainly can keep up. The speed is not a factor, not in that regard, but the size and kind of the physicality, I think, is where we could see some improvement from that Ferris State team. And here, cool little clip of the guys ringing the bell post-game. Ferris State, an absolute run. After starting the year 0-1, they now advance to their 4th national championship game in program history. And when you talk about it, they're just coming off winning back-to-back national championships, and they lost it in 2018. So we're talking about a run here from this Ferris State squad that is among the best in the country, the best in history. To be honest with you, they continue some of this success. They're starting to get into those ranks. So that's enough on the Bulldogs for now. We'll talk more about the championship matchup here in a little bit. Let's go and talk about Minnesota State on the road at Valdosta State. And I'd be remiss if we talk about this game and do not talk about the running back for the Blazers. Alfonso Franklin had himself a career day. Look at this stat line. 24 carries for 152 yards on the ground, 4 catches for 66 yards through the air. That would combine for 5 touchdowns on the day. 5 touchdowns. Valdosta State scored 35. Let's see, 35 divided by 7. It's been a while since I've taken a math class. This guy did it all for Valdosta State. And obviously, there's more to it than that. Some great offensive skill. The offensive line had themselves a day. I don't even need to say that. But just this individual performance, very incredible. Kudos to this guy. Have a day, dude. Like, absolutely go and have a day. The 5th time in school history, Valdosta State has won 13 or more games in a season. That, too. Pretty really neat statistic there. But again, talking about this one, Mankato, they prove they belong in a game like this. And before I talk about them, actually, there's a note here. Franklin's 5 scores. That marked the most touchdowns in a game at Bazemore Hyder Stadium and the most points by one player as well. Broke both those records in the stadium. Mankato, though, they proved they belonged in a game like this. Valdosta State felt like they were scoring quickly at times early on. The first 3 drives, either side, ended up in touchdowns, and the defenses felt like kind of started to settle in. And this one game was very competitive. Going into the 4th quarter, Minnesota State was down 2 scores, right? You're down 14 going into the 4th, and I think a lot of people would have counted them out. You look at that sideline. Minnesota State was nothing but smiles, cool as a cucumber, easy going. And that says it all about this Mavs squad. They've been down and out so many times over the course of the season throughout conference play in the NSIC. And they have won a lot more games than they've lost that have come down to the wire, especially when they've had to make a comeback late. I think you saw that level of composure from this Mavericks team in this one. I was personally very impressed by that. It felt like the momentum, even though being down 2 scores, was with the Mavericks in those moments. They come out, they score to make it a 7-point game. They've won a lot of those kind of games. And we saw a very different Mavs squad this year. Kind of used to them playing more of that bully ball style, really tall offensive line, a couple backs that are just thick kind of barrels between the tackles. Even Sheen Butler lost in a year ago, had a little bit more finesse, but was kind of one of those bully type backs. But this year, 2024, Hayden Eckerd took big strides as a passer. He had some great weapons on the outside. Trayshawn Watson comes to mind immediately, but there are other guys, Grant Guyette, and some other pieces to that offense that really helped him along in that way. That benefited them in the late games for sure. That style of offense is obviously much more suited to a comeback type of situation than maybe running it between the tackles. But I think the change in that Mavs squad, showing they can play maybe 2 different brands of ball, still find a way to win these big-time games and get to the national stage. Very impressive from that team over in Mankato. Rance Connor, he had a 48-yard interception return in the final minute. That sealed the deal for Valdosta State. Felt like Mankato could make something happen on that possession, then who knew what was going to happen? But I thought a really cool note from this one is Coach Jack, Tremaine Jackson there, who also congratulations, AFCA Division II Coach of the Year, a great award there. They're on the 3-yard line and up 2 scores. And as opposed to tacking on another score, making the score maybe look a little bit better for when people look back on this game in 10 years and they say, oh, they only beat them by this much. Like, it's very easy, I think, from a coaching standpoint to think about that and to say, well, I want it to look like a commanding win and not just feel like one. Because Valdosta State was in control of this game, but again, you look back in 10, 15 years, a lot of people are only going to judge it by that box score and the number. So I thought it was a very classy move by him to kneel and go victory formation right there. Felt like the right thing to do. And even though it feels like that, it's certainly not the easiest thing to do. So I wanted to say kudos to them for doing that. I think that's respect towards an incredible opponent in Mankato. But Valdosta State, they pull this one out over Minnesota State. 35-21, your final from down in Titletown, Georgia. Valdosta, they're in the national title for the 7th time ever. I mean, that's become the expectation for the Blazers. They call it Titletown for a reason. That is the reason. This is the 3rd time these teams have met in the championship game in the last 7 years. We talked about it with Trinidad earlier on. They played in 2018. Valdosta State got the better half of Ferris. Ferris comes back and steamrolls them in 2021, and now we get the grudge match. And I think he mentioned it earlier on. This Valdosta State team is a clean slate compared to that 2021 squad. You're talking about a whole new coaching staff for the most part. You're talking about a whole group of guys at Valdosta State that don't even know about that run from the Blazers, as in they didn't experience it. Obviously, they know about it. I'm not an idiot. But what it also means is this is a different play style. This is a different identity, a different culture from a Valdosta State team that has gotten better at a lot of the areas that cost them that national championship just a few years ago. And if you watch that championship, you know that Ferris dominated the line of scrimmage. They got so much pressure on the quarterback, was scrambling the entire day, and they dominated between the tackles on offense. And Valdosta State, if they've gotten better anywhere, it's in their front 7 on defense, and it's on their offensive line group and their downhill run game. They have gotten better in those areas. They've gotten bigger. They've gotten stronger and faster at the point of attack at the line of scrimmage. And if you're playing anyone, that helps. But if you're playing Ferris State, it's a necessity. And for them, that's the biggest point. That game in 2021, it was 58-17, for those who didn't watch. It was nasty. Now, it feels like this defense, I'm not going to say they can absolutely do it, but they can. If they play their A game, they can keep up with the skill from this Ferris State defense. Feels like they can go sideline to sideline. Ferris loves that kind of modified triple option with a pass in there and some other kind of unique wrinkles. They love pure speed to the outside. Can Valdosta State match that speed and go sideline to sideline with a very dynamic Ferris State attack? Can they eliminate the chunk plays up the middle that Ferris has been able to generate, whether it's on the feet of Chambliss or a guy like Katzer or Brady Rose or down the side? There's so many weapons that you have to kind of pick and choose who's going to get theirs on that given day, right? So I'm very excited about it. I'm sure I'll talk more in depth about it later in the week, but really excited about this national championship. And honestly, if you would have told me that it was Valdosta and Ferris playing in a title game this year at the beginning of the season, I'd have been like, yeah, that makes sense. That adds up. Not a shot at any other team, but the best teams find a way. They certainly have done that. They've both earned their way into this national championship, and I, for one, am very excited to see how this one plays out. So that's all on the D2 side today. I'm excited for this national championship. Let's flip over, get talking about some D3 football, and get over the next guest conversation. Joining the show tonight, he leads the Vikings right now, and they're going to their third national championship game in program history. It's Grandview quarterback Jackson Waring. What's up, man?
Hey, Kobe, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Dude, excited to get you on here. Been wanting to make this happen. This is a team that we've talked a good bit about on the show in terms of just recapping games and such, but we have yet to have someone on here from the team to hear about it from their perspective. And at this point of the season, man, this part of the year, what you've been able to do, I kind of figured who better, huh?
Absolutely. I mean, we've had an incredible season. The men on this team have been working their tails off, and we've got ourselves a good run going.
That you do, and that is putting it incredibly nicely. This is the second national championship game for this team in 4 years. You came up short in 2021 against Morningside, that same team you just took down in the semis. Now, you weren't on the team then, right? But it feels like that result and all the things leading up to it kind of feels a little bit like fate, I would kind of go to say, huh?
I mean, it's sure you could put it that way in your terms and your perspective.
Yeah.
But man, these guys, our team, we've just been putting in the work. We've been building each other up, and we have been there for each other every step of the way. And I think just building that family atmosphere and really just focusing on ourselves in each play as its own play and not looking for an outcome has incredibly helped us. And we played a great Morningside team that Saturday, and it was a battle on that field.
It absolutely was, and from what I could tell from, checking out some of that video, and this time around playing the Mustangs, you guys didn't waste any time, right? You did not want to battle from behind in this one. You got out early. You connect with Toki, 59 yards to start things off, score just a couple minutes in on a short touchdown run there. Talk me through that start, and was it kind of just rolling and momentum from there?
Yeah. I mean, we stalled out. I think it was either 2 or 3 drives. I think we had a turnover the next drive.
Yep.
But just like I said prior, it's next play mentality, taking one play at a time. And we understood that Morningside has a explosive offense, and we needed to capitalize on having good drives. And whether we didn't score or not, we were able to have an important impact on field position with our special teams. So regardless if we scored or not, if we could flip the field and get some of that hidden yardage, we could do that to the best of our ability, then I think we'd be sitting in a good position.
I think that's a good point, and actually one that maybe goes, kind of under the radar a lot is if an offensive possession doesn't end in any kind of points, maybe it wasn't a total failure. Obviously from, an offensive coordinator standpoint or from anyone that plays on the offensive side of the ball, like every drive should end in a touchdown or a field goal or something of that sort. But if you're able to totally flip the field and set your defense up in a good way or do some other things, on offense to help build that confidence of your squad, I think that's, there's some good points there. Now, talking about the title game, man, coming up this week, the first time since 2017 that this game is not going to feature Morningside or Northwestern. You beat them both on this playoff run. And my question to you has nothing to do with those teams, but you still get to represent the great state of Iowa. What the hell do they put in the water and or the corn out there?
Corn-fed cornbread. That's all we know out here. But no, Iowa produces a plethora of great athletes, and I'm sure you can see that with Iowa's offense and Iowa's defense, tight end position, O-line, quarterback, DBs, linebackers. I mean, you name it. Iowa high school football has got some great athletes, and Grandview and Morningside and Northwestern are a pipeline for those high school athletes that don't get picked up by FBS and FCS and maybe some D2s.
Absolutely, and not much of a D2 or D3 presence out there, correct?
I think we have Upper Iowa in 5.
Totally.
That's it.
And then is Drake out there as well? And it's sort of like the D1 and kind of the FCS level out there?
Drake is out here. They're next door neighbors to us, and I forgot one. We have Central in Pella, D3.
There you go. But all things considered, compared to the NAIA scene, like that's kind of taken over there. You obviously have, the big kind of Power 4 type teams in the state too. But we talk about Wisconsin as a state of football. We talk about the WAC a lot on this show. And in Wisconsin, if you're not going to Madison and you're not playing for the Badgers, there's a really good chance you're going to play at a Whitewater or La Crosse, some of these really good D3 football teams. And Iowa, some of these Midwestern states, I feel like are very much in that same boat where the NAIA teams in that area and some of the smaller school college football teams benefit from really good high school talent that want to stay in state, but maybe don't have the chops to go play for the Hawkeyes or Cyclones or some of those kind of top talent type programs. You were a guy, though, coming out of high school, you get your chance at a couple of big-time programs. You eventually have this homecoming of sorts and come back to play for this Grandview team. What were your kind of preconceptions coming in back to this program in this area, and how has that weighed through these last 2 seasons for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a journey. I started off at Illinois State and got to experience some awesome things there, built relationships that'll last a lifetime. I still talk to some of those guys today. I still talk to some of those coaches. And I'm very appreciative to have been able to play there, to have gotten the experience that I got. I think, the biggest part of my journey before I got to Grandview was 2 or 3 years ago. I gave my life to Christ. And right behind my phone, I have my baptism, my certification of the baptism when I was this past March, and March 24th, 2024. And it was just declaring who I belonged to, and that was Jesus. And before I got to Grandview, he molded me, he worked on me, and he still continues to work on me. It's an everyday thing. It's not just something you do and then you just leave it to rest. And it's something you work on all the time. And so then once I made that decision to give my life to Christ, at that point at Illinois State, I was done. But I wasn't done in the aspect of still playing football. So I hit the portal, I go to Grandview, take a visit there. I talked with Coach Woodley, Coach Fulton, Coach Knock. I knew a couple of the guys there from last year who I played. I played with a couple of them in high school, some Pee-wee ball. Great conversations, great coaching staff. I love what they were building in this program. Obviously, it's very prestigious from all throughout the years, ever since it was, I think it was brought up in 2008. That's when Grandview became a program here. And I loved it. So I decided to come to Grandview. And yes, my job here is to go to school and play football, but at the same time, my job also is to spread the gospel and to help my teammates grow in their faith and also grow as leaders for themselves, so that when they're done with football, they'll be able to have the capacity to carry themselves as men in the real world. So football used to be my identity. It is not now. Jesus Christ is, and I use in order to boost what Christ has done for me and what Christ can do for others. And it just so happens to be right here at Grandview, where I'm from Ankeny, right down the road. So I get to go see my parents on the weekend. I get to see my buddies who went to a couple other universities. And it's just been a blessing, just be surrounded by everybody, being surrounded by a great coaching staff, great teammates, and then just having my family there to complement that. I've been very grateful for it.
That is awesome. And obviously throughout that process, you talk a lot about those values, and that I'm sure that was number one on your list. So, wherever I go, whether that's really good football team is a great part of that, but the coaching staff and the team and the culture they built there has to match with the values that I have and to what I hold to be very important. I think a really good note out of, what you talked about, there's a lot of great stuff there, but your identity and your purpose, right? And I think football for a lot of people becomes the main thing, and then when that's up and over, it becomes a big question mark. And football can obviously be a big part of your purpose and your identity as being a college football player, but I think having a backbone and for you, Jesus Christ being that for you is an incredible thing, and to be a motivator and a driving factor. And you talk about him molding you and continuing, it's a work in progress. This is not the finished product. And I'd be curious to hear your perspective too. And I don't think it ever is, right? You're constantly, searching to whether that's going and talking to others or lifting other people up or making a difference on and off the football field. I think that's powerful stuff there, dude. I like that a lot.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. You're just working out your salvation and fear and trembling every day in fear of the Lord. But it's a healthy fear. Don't get that mixed up. It's like disobeying your parents.
I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that kind of analogy before. I like that. That's neat. But no, I think that's really good stuff from you there. And to get back and talk about this Viking squad, you guys, you get tested early on by a good Benedictine team. And I say tested, you handle them, right? More than 3 scores, right? Which is people were not able to do that to this squad throughout the course of this year. Other than that, we didn't see you guys face, from an outside perspective, a whole lot of challenges throughout the course of the regular season. And that sometimes can lull a team into sleep. You know what I mean? When you're not playing week in and week out, it's harder to get up for some of those games when it's not a big-time in-state rival or a playoff contending type team. It's sometimes hard for a team to get up and continue to get amped up for some of those games. How did you guys feel you responded to that tough Friends-Falcons team coming into town? Obviously, you come out of round one with the win. You get rolling from there, but that was a back-and-forth contest. You guys had not been tested like that many times throughout the course of the regular season. How did you feel the guys reacted to that?
Yeah, Friends. They were not a 16 seed team.
No,
they were
no way.
They were a really good football team, and we got a lot of respect for those guys, the coaching staff and players. I mean, they played their butts off. But I think the reason why we were able to battle back is to go back into our regular season in Peru State and Graceland. Okay. We didn't come out hot. We didn't come out the gate. We weren't ready to go. We were kind of asleep. I mean, sometimes that happens. I mean, that's the name of the game. That's why you got to go out there and play. You know, a win isn't just going to be handed to you. Mm-hmm. And so we got down. Both those teams got up on us first. I think Graceland got up 10-0 and Peru got up 7. But, you know, we never fainted in the face of adversity. We continue to push. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, you know, it's next play mentality, but it's also being in the moment and understanding, you know, you're not looking to try and get points this drive. Of course, that's the end goal. Yeah. But at the same time, you know, you want to play complementary football. You want to try and put yourself and the guys that are the 11 on that field in the best position to go out there and execute. And that's what we look to do each play. So I think that just puts us in the mindset of, hey, like if we have a negative play or if we turn the ball over or something negative happens, you know, let's not dwell on it. Let's learn from it. Let's learn from our mistakes. And then when we go back out there, we know what we need to do. We know what we need to fix. We'll fix it. And then we'll go out there and dominate. So I think it's just our mentality of how we approach the game. And I really appreciate the men who are around me who also push myself too. You know, yeah, it's an 11-person effort. Everyone's got their 1/11th role. And if one of them is not going to be, you know, participating in the role, then you're only as strong as your weakest link. So we make sure to have everybody focused and knowing their assignment and just playing good fundamental football.
Football is the ultimate team sport. And at this stage of the game, there's so many great storylines that go into a matchup like this in the national championship. And I think one of the best things that comes out of this, especially at the small school level, is the eyes and the visibility of a game like this, right? And for people who maybe know nothing about this Grandview team, what should they know heading into this national championship game about this Vikings team, offensively, defensively, but more about the guys and the culture and what you guys have been able to build and what you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, we're a bunch of guys who love each other. You know, we got a family atmosphere. I mean, we're going to fight. We're going to build each other up, and we're going to lead one another. We're going to be there for one another when we need it. I mean, because I mean, at some point you're going to face adversity. There's going to be something that goes down. But this team right here, we're strong, we're resilient, and we won't back down from anybody, not even ourselves. And that's one thing that I love about this team is that we're just a unit. We're very cohesive. Even when stuff hits the fan, we look to each other, and we're a bend don't break team, regardless of the situation. And we're just gonna go out there and play the best football we can and just give it to the Lord. You know, regardless of win or lose, at the end of the day, when we walk off the field, we're going to know that we gave it our all and that we got nothing left in the tank.
A lot of traits of very high level, whether that's football teams, organizations, professionally, individuals. A lot of those things stack up, and you'll find that that's commonplace among, you know, the people who are the best at what they do and, you know, whatever kind of path they choose in life, my friend. But Jackson, really appreciate your candidness, your transparency, my man. That's all I got for you tonight. Really excited to tuning into this game and follow along with you guys, dude.
Thank you, Kobe. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Have a good rest of your night, man.
All right, brother. See ya.
All right, time to talk some D3 football. Jimmy, we're going to start with, I think, in everyone's opinion, probably the game of the week. Whether you loved it or you hated it, you watched. Susquehanna, they play host to Bethel, come out with a 24-21 win in a ridiculous fashion, dude.
Yeah, wild. The fact that we talked about this earlier, the fact that they only led for 38 seconds the entire game and they still managed to come out with the victory is like, it's just going to be backbreaking for Bethel. I mean, having a really good defensive performance like that and giving up some points late, I mean, it's got to sting for a really good program for those guys. But Yeah, Susquehanna coming out on top.
They did, and in this one, you mentioned it, only led for about 30 seconds, and right here, first touchdown of the day. All this video courtesy of Logan Moyer on Twitter. Shout out to him, appreciate the coverage. Susquehanna, first touchdown, they tied up at 7 apiece in the second quarter. Did not score in the first. Now, this one, nothing too crazy and nothing too noteworthy about the touchdown, but a big-time touchdown in that it finally got them on the board, Jimmy, and after that, the Royals, they would score just a few minutes later. I think literally 2 or 3 minutes later, they'd go up 14-7. So that tie was taken away pretty quickly by Bethel. Susquehanna, they bounced back. They tied up again halfway through the third quarter. I want you to see this dot on the throw and catch from the Riverhawks right here. Back of the end zone, over the top. Ooh. Looked like it could have even got a piece of the DB's finger, but just an absolutely beautifully placed ball and a great over-the-shoulder grab. It was tied up again halfway through the third, 14-14, dude.
Yeah, a lot of action in this one. Another couple stats I do want to point out, though. Bethel, Micah Newell, 16 catches for 154 on a touchdown, even in a loss. I mean, that is an incredible performance, 16 catches. I know we had a guy a few weeks ago, I think it was on Johns Hopkins. He had like 19 catches or something. I don't remember quite, but like 16, that just popped right off the screen on the stat book for sure.
Absolutely did. Now, the big play on the other side of the ball for Susquehanna, the Riverhawks, the defense, they get the fumble recovery here, punch the ball out in the third quarter. They had a couple times where they stepped up big time, and they forced a couple turnovers on downs on fourth down for this Bethel offense. This was obviously a massive play. Bethel getting over about midfield here. Again, still in the third quarter, able to punch that ball out and get the ball back for their offense as we continue going through this one. And it literally was, just so much back and forth. The Bethel, they'd score 21-14 right at the start of the fourth quarter. A field goal from Susquehanna made it 21-17. So things are starting to get a little bit interesting. Then, for the first time today, Susquehanna would take the lead on this touchdown run. The quarterback, Ehrlich, he runs it in with 39 seconds left to take the lead for the first time all game. And again, nothing too flashy about the play call. Roll him out, just absolute toughness, goes through 2 defenders, puts the ball over the goal line, and Susquehanna Riverhawks, they lead it.
Hey, big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games, Kobe. It's the most cliche saying in the book, but it comes to fruition right there.
It absolutely did. Now, where this game gets interesting, Jimmy, is the wild sequence at the end, right? The end of the game to kind of set the scene. I'm going to pull up the video here once again from Logan Moyer. And this one just, I think, interesting, doesn't really do it justice. Bethel having a chance to take the lead at the end of the game, like literally last play of the game. They're going all or nothing, trying to make a play. And I'll show you what happens, and then I'll kind of explain it for those, watching at home. Bethel, drop back here, fire one into the end zone. It's caught. No way. Great play there. Come back to the ball and make that play in the end zone. So it's caught for the touchdown. That's the ruling on the field. But you look back, and you can't see it from in this angle. There's a flag on the play for a hold. You can see it on the right side of the line right there. You see the defensive lineman throw his right arm up, like the classic D-line, like, come on, give me something here. You see it on the left side of the screen. Boom. Arm goes up there. There is a flag called for a hold. So this is where it gets really interesting. The refs, they call the hold on that Bethel tackle, and here's a good picture of said call. Again, not leaning one way or the other, but just showing whatever evidence we have. Here's a good photo. I'll have to move it around. Hold on, so you can get a better view of it on the screen here. That's about as good as it's going to get as a photo of the hold. Ooh. And pretty incriminating view, I will say. Yeah. Pretty incriminating view for the hold. Yeah. So, whether or not it's the right time to make a call like that is totally a different conversation, but a pretty incriminating view as far as, just a bad look for that offensive lineman there for Bethel. But that's where it gets really interesting. So the refs, they call the hold, they announce a runoff, which would effectively mean the game is over. But I don't believe it can end that way. So then they say it's a replay of down. But, of course, another wrinkle gets added in that a Bethel player got an unsportsmanlike conduct, a 15-yard penalty after the play. That gets enforced, so it pushes Bethel back. And they have one more chance. After all of this is said and done, they have one more chance to try and pull off the victory on the road. And they instead of trying to describe it, I suppose I will just let the video play, and we can watch along and see exactly what they did here. They pass it up, one lateral, two laterals, can't find anything, flips it all the way across the field. Thought in real time that might have been a forward pass, but no call there. Lateral back, and now you start to see the eventual downfall further and further down the field. Eventually, big fella gets it, coughs it up, and the tackle is made. Susquehanna, they win it, Jimmy, on one of the most ridiculous finishes we've seen all year. And again, love it or hate it, fantastic football game. So many great back and forth moments from these teams.
And that's anything but a normal game. I mean, just wild stuff there, especially in the quarterfinal game.
Yes.
Wild. So that's why we cover D3 football, man. That's why we do it.
Yes, it is, dude. It absolutely is. But, you know, at the end of the day, Susquehanna, they advance. They continue their playoff hunt. Their hopes of a national championship very much still alive there for the Riverhawks. And we talked about it earlier. They only held the lead in this game for 38 seconds, which is not a trait that you see from many playoff teams, from any teams in general, to be honest with you, just not something you see very often. So kudos to them for their ability to rally late and get this one done. Talked about Ehrlich getting his way across, and that 4th and goal from the 1-yard line. That was literally all or nothing for them. And, I mean, those are the big notes. Susquehanna, they're under 10th year. Head coach Perk over there continues their historic run. They got the most wins ever in a season, sitting at 12-1 right now. That's an incredible year for them. Ehrlich became the first Susquehanna quarterback to amass 3,000 yards passing. He's got 3,079. And he also has a school records for passing touchdowns in a season. That's up to 33 now.
It's good work. Solid work right there.
Long way of saying good football player.
Yeah.
Very, very good football player. But all that being said, next week at North Central, preliminary thoughts. What do you think about this matchup?
It's going to be a tough one for them. I think North Central's defense is like as good as it's been in a long time.
Yes.
I think their defense is like holding Springfield to 3 points last week is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with how good they're running the ball. But I think I haven't looked at the spread yet, but I have a feeling like Susquehanna is going to cover whatever the spread might be, but North Central is going to win the game.
Okay, so, I mean, yeah, we haven't taken a look, but that's early indication is cover, but probably taking North Central outright, and we'll talk maybe more in depth.
If I had to guess, I would say it'll be like 17.
Really? That big, huh?
Yeah, because the national championship last game was North Central minus 17 against Cortland. So, I mean, the Hanson ratings favored North Central big time in those spreads, but, you know, like I said, we'll see. I mean, I have a feeling Susquehanna is going to cover the spread for sure.
I hear you there. Absolutely. And for Bethel, Cooper Drews finishes another big-time day, passed in the rock, 33 of 45, 248 and a touchdown, took care of the ball through the air. Bethel didn't have a whole lot going on in the ground game, let up a couple of sacks as well. It didn't help their case. Ehrlich finishes, had a good day, but did have 2 interceptions through the air. That was a big part that kept Bethel in this game. Micah Newald for the Royals, 16 catches, 154 yards and a touchdown, and then Joey Kidder had 11 catches for 78 yards, both big-time days. 16 catches in a game is,
yeah.
I mean,
yeah, I know we talked
absurd.
about it a little bit earlier, but man, like 16,
yeah, you had mentioned it.
Wild.
Bethel
wild
also
stuff.
had 4 guys with over 10 tackles on the day.
Yeah.
And, you know, usually it's Matt June that we're talking about with the big-time takeaway for this Bethel team. He did it just a week ago. But on this day, it was Nate Farm, 2 interceptions. He got both of them through the air for that Bethel defense, which certainly ended up being some big-time plays, especially in a game as close and competitive as that one. But let's move over. Mount Union taking the trip to Salisbury, their head coach over there, taking home the AFCA Coach of the Year award. We just found out earlier this week. But talk to me about this one early on, kind of implications going into this game.
Yeah, so Mount Union had the opportunity to go to their 27th out of 29 semifinal games heading into this one, and they became successful in that endeavor. They're going 27 of 29 in the Final Four. Is just, I mean, it's the epitome of consistency. I think eventually, I mean, maybe we'll see a team like North Central get to that point, but I mean, they've been doing it for almost a decade now. But you got to think Mount Union. This is like going on 3 decades of complete dominance and consistency. Like, man,
yeah,
oh man,
when you think about it like that, there's nothing like that at any level of football.
Level.
I mean,
At
it's
Yeah.
It really is incredible. And in this game, Salisbury actually struck first. I mean, the final this one, Mount Union takes it 38-17, so you maybe would have thought this was more of a wire victory. But the Seagulls, they got it going first in the first quarter. Things got worse for the Purple Raiders after the early touchdown right here, rolling out to the right, kind of a deep pass floating towards the sideline. That ball hangs in the air a little bit too long. That's intercepted. And so it felt like just one thing after another early on in this game, Mount Union did not have a lot going on. Their defense would actually come to bail them out on the ensuing series. Mount Union, they'd force a turnover on downs for the Seagulls just a few plays later. So that was kind of their saving grace early on in this one, Jim. But they got the offense going. Eventually, your guy, Echeverry, I mean, talk about his impact. I'll play the clip here of a little swing pass that he turns into a big-time touchdown. But he had another great performance. He has just turned into one of the more consistent offensive performers, I think, in all of D3 football.
Yeah, you talking about that. Like, he's a true dual threat running back. 7 catches, 64 yards receiving and a touchdown. Picking up 19 carries, 42 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns. That run defense is pretty solid for Salisbury. I mean, holding Echeverry to 42 rushing yards, only 2.2 yards a carry. I mean, you got to tip the cap to those guys. I mean, obviously, but Echeverry is a true dual threat running back.
He absolutely is. Just very good in space, but can also do it between the tackles and, whatever kind of he's asked to do. I think he steps up to the occasion there. And then he didn't get the next score for the Purple Raiders. That came from the tight end position. Drew Sims scores with 9 minutes to go in the first half. Mount Union takes the lead for the first time on the day, 14-7. A quick little kind of pop pass right here in the red zone gets it going in the hands of the Purple Raider in the back of the end zone here. Big time play. Looking right into the camera. He's feeling it.
Yeah.
Love it. And supposedly, shout out to d3football.com for these clips, by the way, but supposedly he was taken off the field, assumed to be injured earlier in the drive, came back in to make this play right here. Looks all right. Dog. So that was big. They got rolling there, never looked back. Not too many other kind of highlight moments. I think it was really all Purple Raiders from that point on. Mount Union went on to roll to that victory. And you said it, dude. NCAA semifinals, 27 of the last 29 seasons since 1995. They've been doing it longer than either of us have been on this earth.
Doesn't even sound real. Like, that sounds like a fake stat. Like, it sounds like there'd be like a Twitter community note saying this is not true. Like, that it is true. Like, it is it's just crazy stuff.
Absolutely.
Crazy stuff.
And Salisbury, they were the second team in NCAA Division III when it came to rushing yards per game. Their average going into Saturday was 335.5 rushing yards per game. Mount Union held them to 117.
Tough,
Very
man.
impressive. And I thought that North Central performance was really impressive. We'll talk about it, but this is right up there. I mean, that Salisbury attack, the way they were able to totally eliminate that, they were almost a non-factor when it came to that offensive ground game. And Mount Union also able to overcome maybe some early adversity, a really telling point of a very, very strong football team. But let's move over and talk about another really highly contested game here. Mary Hardin Baylor have picked it up in the playoffs. Their regular season was certainly anything but what we've come to expect from the Crew. They put together a great playoff run, come up a little bit short on Saturday. Johns Hopkins takes this one 17-10, Jim.
Yeah, and then obviously being up 17-0 at half, too, kind of interesting dynamic there. Didn't even score in the second half. Going to the semifinals for the second time in program history. Really, really wild stat here. Johns Hopkins has held their 3 playoff opponents to a total of 33 points and 87 rushing yards.
Mm-hmm.
That defense is something else. And then we talked about it last week, too. They continue to make huge stops at the end of the game to get the win for their team. That defense has been
absolutely. Their defense.
There's a lot of really good defenses. That people always say defense wins championships, and some of the best defenses in D3 are still hanging around. So
that they do. The defense here making the game-sealing play against the Crusaders here. That is the scene from Johns Hopkins. And, I mean, you talk about that stat. 33 points, 87 total rushing yards in the last 3 weeks against the likes of Randolph-Macon, a really talented and powerful Grove City ground game, and then against the Crew as well. And they just continue to put together some really outstanding football. And the all-black uniforms from them, by the way, I don't think we appreciate those enough.
Yeah, those are
incredible.
Those are hard.
With the Jays script on the side is sick.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Hey, there are a couple of those guys on their team, welcome to Baltimore. They they welcomed them to Baltimore, right? They were ready to go for those guys.
Yes, they were. And I mean, this is kind of turned into one of maybe the quote unquote feel good stories here in D3 football. And you go back to that moment with Grove City post game, right, where they're all huddled around the field after the game after a really great competitive contest, and they've just continued to go and grow. And it feels like the culture and all the momentum is over in the hands of the Blue Jays right now with Johns Hopkins, dude. Really sweet picture right there. I love those. Yeah, check that scene out, dude. Really, really sweet. The Big Ten up there is so ridiculous too when you out of context.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of funny?
Yeah, it's just goofy.
And people always get tripped up about the end zones, right? With it being kind of the lacrosse taking precedent.
Yeah.
But our final game of the weekend slate, Springfield, they go into North Central. Cardinals not having any of it, dude. 27-3, North Central takes this one, and I think we have to start with the statistics from that defense. If you follow us on socials, you saw it. Some outrageous numbers from this Cardinals defense, what they're able to do against that Pride attack, Jim.
I mean, just absurd. I mean, you really can't play much better. Obviously, they gave up 3 points. I'm sure they wanted the goose egg, but I mean, I can't say enough about it, truthfully. I mean, they're they continue week after week after week to just dominate their opponents at the in the front, in the box, front seven, you name it, outside, secondary, everywhere. They swarm to the football, Toby. They are all over the field.
That they were. You look at on the screen right now, their stats from Springfield's offense compared to their season average. You go down the list, yards per carry on Saturday, 3.7. On the year, it was 6.9. Like, that's nothing, maybe too ridiculous. Springfield came into this one averaging 427 yards per game on the ground, compared to a bit over 200. You look at the third down percentage, was only 13%. Compared to an average of 58. That's because North Central got after them on first and second down, gave them a lot less manageable third and fourth down opportunities. Points per game is obviously one that stands out. 3 points compared to their usual 45. Yeah. And finally, the rushing touchdowns. They did not let them score a touchdown, let alone a rushing touchdown, when they're averaging almost 6 per game. Just ridiculous statistics from an incredible defense, and one that gets often overshined by some big-time playmakers on the other side of the ball, and Sakawa out of the backfield, and Landon obviously under center, and some of the guys that they have in the offensive skill positions. But it certainly is time to give them the respect they deserve, dude, because that is just an incredible performance. Cardinals advancing to the Division III National Semifinals for the 5th straight season.
Nothing new with those guys. Nothing new with those.
No, there really isn't.
Nothing new.
And North Central, they had the ball first, 7 straight running plays. So give them a taste of maybe their own medicine. Go down to the Springfield 2-yard line. Lanen rolls to his right, connects for the 2-yard touchdown pass. And it was like, here we go. Like, this thing, watching that drive live, I wouldn't say knife through butter. I think that wouldn't really make the best kind of analogy to it. But it was very obvious that North Central had command of the flow of this football game early on. And Springfield did not have the answer.
Methodical. I think that might be the word you're looking for.
Yes, no, methodic is absolutely, I think, a really good way to put it, because, just how that word implies, like, they knew exactly what they were doing. Now, moving forward, you talk about that game versus Susquehanna, I think that's probably the matchup that you like if you're a Cardinals fan, to be honest, compared to maybe the other side of the bracket. So I know a lot of people are calling Mount Union North Central in the Natty early on, but that's why we still play the game, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Why we still play it. But we'll talk more maybe about those matchups later on. But I think that's all for this week, Jim. Some really good football being played, dude.
Yeah, man. Yeah, a lot of good football. That was a good show tonight.
Absolutely. Sweet. Thank you, man. Have a good rest of your night.
Take care.
Okay, it's time to talk NAIA football. The semifinal matchups over this weekend. The national championship is set. Kaiser, let's talk about the Seahawks first. Very close, competitive ball game. They take it over Benedictine 42-38. The Seahawks prevail. They're going back to the national championship for the second year in a row. I almost just totally lost my words there. Pulling a couple of pieces of the film here from this one. And Kaiser, they found themselves behind early on. You see it here. Benedictine takes a 6-0 lead. 2 kicks off the foot of Harry Balke. That would be 6-0 Benedictine. But Kaiser driving down the field here in the second quarter. And you like that completion right there. Down the right sideline, they score. They take the lead 7-6. Shea Spencer having himself a day. He has done it a lot over the course of this season. He continued to do it. Was a little bit banged up in this one at certain points. Also banged up the quarterback from Benedictine, who we had the chance to have on this show, Jackson Dooley. You had himself a ball game, but right there, found himself in the wrong end of the turf. Kaiser's defense getting it done. How about Spencer here up the middle? Getting them very close in the red zone, still in the second quarter. Kaiser holding on to a 1-point lead. They would score. It'd be off the run from here from Andrew Burnett. 3-yard touchdown run through the elements, as you can see, and Kaiser now is up 14-6. This is where things got a little bit interesting, though, and it wasn't until later on that Benedictine would tie things up. And we fast forward here some of the highlights in the fourth quarter as Kaiser got things going late. They found themselves down, as you can see on the scoreboard, 31-14 at one point. Kaiser forced to have a little bit of a comeback. That touchdown right there coming up from the hands of Refino Van Gates. Hopefully pronouncing that one correctly. Apologize there. But a big-time play from him nonetheless. They're clawing their way back into it, driving back down the field. This time, Shea Spencer doing it with his feet. He pitches it at the last second across the middle. Keep things going for the Seahawks. Eventually, it was DeAndre Golden, the 14-yard touchdown pass from Shea Spencer. That would make this a 38-28 ball game. And you can see them continuing to drive down the field. This Kaiser team is very multidimensional. We talked about that offensive backfield, some of the weapons they have there, but the quarterback plays where they have stepped up. You see the catch right there from Golden back of the end zone. Great grab from the big fella, and they make this a 10-point game. A defensive stop keeps this thing very interesting. Now we're getting down to it. 3.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Spencer up the left side. He's going to do it himself with his feet. Opts to take the slide for the first down on 2nd and 10. You can see there, a little slow to get up. I had mentioned it earlier on. He powers through, though. Absolute warrior here for this Seahawks attack. Dishes it off to the right side, up the gut, and Kaiser continues to drive down the field, eyeing a return to the national championship game. Takes a shot down the field. Absolute bullet into the window. Completes that one. And 2 minutes left here. Still down by 10. They need a score. He gives it to them. Runs it in for the score. Kaiser making things very interesting late. Less than 2 minutes to go. Still down by 3. They get the ball back. The defense for Kaiser continuing to step up on the other side of the ball, forcing Benedictine to cough it up, and that defense for the Ravens was not able to get it done late. Taking some shots down the field, continues to connect on the sideline. Another catch there from Golden, and they have things moving down the field. Once again in the pocket, over the middle. I mean, talk about a dude just taking over. There were 3 Raven defenders in the area right there. Still completes the pass, finds a way, goes back to it on the right side into the end zone. This time, though, it's Alicia Edwards. 25 yards from Shea Spencer with 21 seconds to go in the game. Kaiser leads 41-38. The extra point would be good. They'd go up by 4, and that would be the closing remarks on this one. Benedictine has a very good chance here with 5 seconds left. You see it right here. Dooley under pressure. Goes back, gets rid of it for an opportunity in the end zone. That one batted away by a couple crossing Seahawks, and that would close the game out. Kaiser is going back to another national championship game. Kudos to the Seahawks. They also got some other big-time news this week in that their coach earned himself the AFCA NAIA Coach of the Year award. Shout out to Miles Russ. That is a big-time award for a guy who's come in and taken over this program and continued to lead them in great trajectory, getting back to the same place as a year ago. And of course, I'm sure, outside people will judge him on the fact of whether or not he can win this next game. But the fact he's been able to come in and continue the success of this Kaiser team that has had a ton of turnover at a lot of different positions. I mean, very, very impressive stuff from this Kaiser squad. So they scored 21 unanswered points in the final 6 minutes. I mean, you watched it right there. Shea Spencer, he finishes with 412 yards, a school record, which of course the Kaiser team is relatively new. 26 of 39 passing, 4 touchdowns, also ran for a team high 72 yards. He had 484 yards of total offense. He became the school's all-time leader in total offense with almost 6,500 yards on the career. He also accumulated 239 of those passing yards in the fourth quarter alone. He was a 14 of 18 in the fourth. Incredibly efficient, almost surgical under center, 3 of those being touchdowns, of course. Talked about DeAndre Golden earlier on, led the team with 9 catches, 140 yards, and a touchdown. They kept going back to him. A big target that is not afraid to go in the middle of the field, force some of those windows and those throws. Spencer's great at getting them the ball in those kind of situations. So Kaiser advances in a comeback fashion, which maybe isn't what we expected, but that offense from Benedictine, we knew they were going to kind of keep them in the game there. Let's move over. We'll talk a little bit about this Grandview team. And again, we talked about it with Jackson earlier on. This Grandview team, Morningside, they had met in the national championship just a few years ago. How would this time go for this Grandview team? The Vikings on a hell of a run. Well, it went a little bit like this. Deep down the field, they connect there. They set up, I believe, a 3-yard touchdown run on the ensuing couple of plays, and Grandview had some great stuff going early on. They'd win this one 36-13, and it was a little bit more of a wire-to-wire victory than this Kaiser squad. Grandview got out to a 21-0 lead in the first half, and Morningside would respond with a touchdown of their own. Grandview kicks a field goal going into halftime. That's 23-7 heading into the break, and Waring, he was all over the field here. Just absolute dots. Look at the one-handed grab by Toki on the right side. Dives across the pylon for the score. Absolutely great play from the receiver there, and they were absolutely rolling were the Vikings. Now, Morningside came out in the second half. They responded. Touchdown pass made it 13-23. It wasn't enough. Grandview, 2 more scores in the third and fourth quarter, respectively. They finished 36-13 over the Mustangs and are going to their second national championship, this time trying to bring home, the ultimate result in being that title. So, massive win for this Grandview squad. And we talked, again, with Jackson about, what this team really is made up of and their DNA, and I think he said it more eloquently and better than anything that I'm going to say right now. So I'm going to leave the cliff notes there on this Grandview squad. Hell of a year for Morningside. We talked about they're obviously have been dominant out there, and they've made a fair share of their national championship appearances. But Grandview, Kaiser, that is your slate for the national championship. Really excited to talk about that one and break it down. But as far as tonight goes, that's the end of this episode of D1 Rejects. Thank you very much for tuning in if you've made it all the way to the end. Otherwise, what are you doing? But follow us on the socials. Check us out on the other platforms. Thank you very much for tuning in. And tune into this, but also go tune into some great football this weekend. A lot of great football being played at the small school college football levels. So definitely want to see you guys tune in, support, show up in person if it's by you. Thank you.